Welcome to the Hotty Toddy Chat. My name is Jack Couch. I'm here with sports editor Adam Brown. Today we have a guest joining us and Coach Bill Courtney. He was the head coach for the Manassas Tigers in North Memphis, and he was the coach in the documentary Undefeated. He's an Ole Miss alumni, and we're excited to have him on our show.
Could you start off about telling how you got into coaching and your love for football and stuff?
Sure. I grew up in Memphis, and my father and mother were divorced when I was 4, and a lot of stepdads in and out of my life, and I came up. I had 2 grandfathers that were great guys, but the guys that really were the most impactful in my life as a young man, when I was dealing with all kinds of questions and insecurities that come with fatherlessness and broken homes. My football coaches were the guys that meant the most to me, and went to Ole Miss, got a degree in psychology and English. Didn't really know. Kind of thought I might want to be go into psychology. Started thinking about working on my doctorate, and I took a job teaching school and coaching football, because football meant so much to me as a young man coming up, and my coaches meant so much to me that I thought it was a great discipline and a calling. And so I coached football and taught school for a living. And then I met Lisa, who is I way outkicked my coverage and wanted to keep her around the house. So we started having kids. So 4 years later, we had 4 kids, and I was making $17,000 a year with no insurance, and had this 4 children under the age of 5 and a wife. And I just couldn't keep coaching for a living. So I got into the private world, ended up starting a lumber business, but I continued to coach. And in Tennessee, you can be what's called a certified non-faculty coach if you take classes and go through all this certification. And so, although I had to leave coaching as an employment, as my source of income, I continued to do it as something I was just passionate about. And I started a business in North Memphis, and there's a school called Manassas, which was about a half a mile from where my business was. And the opportunity came up to continue coaching and coach there. And candidly, it was convenient because it was near where my work was. So I got into coaching as a profession. And then I stayed in coaching kind of as a passion while I changed my professions to try to provide better for my family. But coaching has been a profession and a passion, and something that's just always been part of what I do.
Looking back at your time at Manassas, what do you take from that through your daily life?
You got about 7 hours.
Okay.
We can edit it down. That's all. It's easy.
Yeah. You got to understand the demographics of the neighborhood surrounding Manassas. Manassas is surrounded by 3 neighborhoods really where the kids come from, which is New Chicago, Greenlaw, and Smoky City. Those 3 neighborhoods have all kinds of demographics that would explain to you what it is. And I don't want to sensationalize it, but it's fewer than 1% of the people in those neighborhoods have a college degree. Fewer than half have an operating vehicle. An 18-year-old male is 3 times more likely to be incarcerated or dead by his 21st birthday than he is to have a job. It is, I think, I don't know the exact number, but in the top 5 poorest zip codes in the United States. It is abject despair, poverty, disenfranchisement, food desert, job desert. It is a forgotten place, and it has been generationally forgotten. And has generational poverty. And so when I got to Manassas, I found a football team that had won 4 games in 10 years and had 17 kids on the team. And, that's what I found. But what I also found were a bunch of kids from a really rough area that simply wanted to be part of something good. They were all yes or no, sir. They were all attentive. They all wanted to work hard. They just wanted an even playing field and opportunity. And so we went to work coaching football. We went to work teaching tenets and fundamentals like character and commitment and teamwork and the dignity of hard work and the value of showing up on time, and all kinds of stuff that, values that you hope you learn through football that lasts long after the playing days are over. And 7 years later, we had 75 kids on the team, and our last 2 years we were 18-2. And it's a testament to, the success in your life should not depend on the zip code at the time of your birth. These kids are no different than any other kids. You give them a level playing field, you hold them accountable, you teach them well, and you give them opportunity, and they can succeed, even in an area that is maybe one of the less successful areas in the whole United States. And so what did I learn? I learned, the long-winded answer to your question, I learned the value of the human spirit. I learned that no matter where you are or where you come from, when you employ valuable tenets in your life, you can find success. But I also learned that it's an accurate narrative that everybody starts from the same place. Our country is a great country. It's a free country. We get a free education. We have lots of opportunity and freedoms in our country. And I am a huge believer in American exceptionalism and all of that. But the whole cold, hard facts that I also learned is we all don't start from the same place. And there are a lot of burdens that some of us have to overcome that others don't. And that's just a real truth that I really didn't understand before my time at Manassas. But despite those truths, there's still opportunity and there's still ability to overcome from even the most dire circumstances. And I remain inspired by the work the kids on that football team did to take one of the worst programs in the United States and turn it into one of the best.
Yeah, that's an amazing. I mean, it's just amazing, Coach, what you're able to do. If you had to pick out one moment your whole time coaching, was there just a single moment that you think that just kind of defined what you took going forward? Is there any? I know you're explaining how it is moving forward. Is there a moment that you kind of felt that switch?
Look, Undefeated, won the Academy Award, great movie, an honor to be in it, all of that. But that was the last year. The most defining moment for me was my first year. We were 3 wins and 3 losses in my first year. And I think that's kind of average, but when you've won 4 games in 10 years, 3-3 ain't bad, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, they thought I was kind of a fat redheaded version of Lane Kiffin or something. So we were 3-3, and all of the kids were yes or no, sir, on the football field. We were providing them with new equipment, new uniforms, making sure they had everything they need to try to be successful. And they were working hard on the football field, working hard in the weight room, doing everything we asked of them on the football field. And half the team was also buying into this important stuff, like what we're talking about: character, commitment, integrity, all those tenets and fundamentals. The other half the team, while really into the football, yes or no, sir, the minute practice or games or workouts or whatever were over, they were kind of migrating back to the streets, involving themselves in the same kind of destructive behavior that got them to 4-96 in the first place, and it was going to lead them to 4-96 in life, if you get the metaphor. And it was driving me crazy. And every coach kind of has a guy. And I went to my guy and I said, hey, man, I'm so proud of this team and what we've accomplished on the field, but I'm pretty frustrated. What do I got to do to get that half the team to buy into the important stuff like your half the team? And this is a guy that always kind of helped me. And there was a lot of cultural differences that I had to learn and understand in order to best serve this team and to coach this team. And he always talked to me in real talk, but this time he said, "Oh, coach, just keep doing what you're doing," kind of dismissively. And I'm like, "No, bro, real talk." He said, "Coach, I don't want to hurt your feelings." So you're not going to hurt my feelings. I want to know why that half the team won't buy into the important stuff like you're half the team. Real talk. He said, "All right, straight talk." I said, "Yeah." He said, "They're trying to figure out if you're a turkey person or not, coach." And I mean, I kind of looked at him. I'm sure I grinned or shook my head or whatever. And I mean, I've learned a lot of phrases in vernacular my first year at Manassas that I hadn't used in my life before, but that one was a new one. And I said, "Man, what are you talking about?" And he said, "Coach, every Thanksgiving and Christmas, people roll into our neighborhoods from where you live and they drop off gifts and hams and turkeys. And we take them because we ain't got none. But then they leave and we never see them again. Makes you wonder if they're doing that because they really care about us or they're doing that to make themselves feel good." He looked me dead in the eyes and he said, "Coach, what the hell are you doing here for real, man?" Now, what I want you to understand about the story is if you serve in soup kitchens or provide turkeys or hams or gifts during the holidays for the needy, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's a beautiful, honorable thing to do. All right. But what's your motive? What's your motive? All right. Do you do it because other people see you doing that and it makes you feel good? Do you do it because you like the way that it kind of exalts your position in society? Are you taking the job and the raise at work just for the extra money and the bigger title? Or are you motivated not only by that, that's natural, but also because of the opportunity it gives you to serve and lead other people? Does the extra, as you elevate yourself in society by the things that you do you do that specifically for your own selfish selfish world, or do you also do it to exact some measure of change on people that desperately need it? What's your motive for doing the things you do? And the greatest measure of the success of a leader is the actions of the followers. And if you measure yourself in your society and in your family and in your business and as a coach by that one rule, and you've got guys on your team or in your business or in your family who aren't getting it right and aren't doing what they need to be do, and you're in charge of them, first place you need to look at's in the mirror. And the truth was, anytime anybody asked me about Manassas, I was happy to tell them what I was doing. I was getting them ACT prep classes. I was providing them new equipment. I was providing them this. I was providing them that. People come up, "Hey, man, Manassas 3-3. I never thought that would happen. Tell me about that." And all the time I would tell them everything I was doing. And the truth is, I did feel good about the way people looked at me and how they responded to me because of the really nice thing I was doing for these poor Black kids at Manassas. Meanwhile, my kids were getting called sellouts. My kids were doing their homework and getting called chumps. My kids had family members calling, "Man, what you mean you can't be late, getting on time?" I mean, they were subscribing to these things that maybe their culture and society really didn't trust in and believe in. And every time I was asked anything about Manassas, instead of giving credit to those kids for the success we were having, I was taking it. And I was taking it because it made me feel good. And the truth is, the reason that half the team wasn't buying into the important stuff is because I was a fraud. I wasn't being a servant and leading them for their own good. I was buying in too much to the narrative about what a cool guy I was doing that work. And what it taught me, and what a 17-year-old kid from the hood taught me, is if you're going to be in a leadership position as a manager, a coach, a father, a spouse, serve and lead, and understand that the greatest measure of the success of the work you're doing is the actions of the followers. And if followers aren't right, it's probably on you. And then the next thing is, the greatest leaders of our time always give credit to the followers when things go well, and they stand out in front of the followers when things aren't going well. They take the heat in the bad times, they give credit in the good times. And when I started giving credit to my players and I stepped back and allowed them to have the excitement of their own success, that's when things really started to change. And what I learned from Manassas was that very tenet, not to be a turkey person. And it has served me well in my business. It has served me well in coaching. It served me well in society. It served me well with my family.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, Coach.
You're crushing this. This is the easiest
Yeah.
podcast I'm ever going to have to do. Switching gears a little bit, you're talking so much about giving back. I know that you do. You helped found the philanthropy event on campus, the Sigma Nu Bowl, correct?
Charity Bowl, yeah.
Charity
So,
Bowl. Sorry about that.
yeah, I was there when Chucky got hurt. I was actually on the sideline when Chucky got hurt. I will never forget. I will never forget when he was rolled off the field on that gurney. I'll never forget when he hit Brad Gaines. I'll never forget when Chucky fell on about the 5 or 6 yard line, and his elbow was still up, and his arm slowly fell to the ground. And I thought, oh no, he's knocked out cold. And then it didn't take but a few minutes to figure out it was a whole lot worse than being knocked out. I'll never forget the picture of him with his helmet still on, and they cut the face mask off to get to him to resuscitate him. Your generation doesn't really understand what Chucky was. And I'll give you a little background. At that time, people at Ole Miss games still waved the Confederate flag, and the Ole Miss band played Dixie about 20 times a game. 99% of the people in Vaught-Hemingway didn't do that because they were racist. They did that because it was kind of Ole Miss rebels, Confederate flag, Dixie, the whole shtick, and people really, it was what we did. What we didn't understand, most of us back at that time, is the rest of the country was looking at us going, now what is that all about? And candidly, it made recruiting hard. Other schools would use that when sitting down with mamas and grandmamas and daddies recruiting kids. And then Chucky, this black freshman from Russellville, Arkansas, breaks his neck. And the campus rallied around him like you wouldn't believe. The alumni rallied around him like you wouldn't believe. And in the midst of this time where there's this, racial, social thing out there that no one knew really how to reconcile, it was Chucky who did it. One another's humanity all of a sudden became a hell of a lot more important than the song Dixie. And Chucky's an icon because of the courage he displayed. Chucky's an icon because of a lot of what happened in his life, in his short life afterwards before he passed. But Chucky was an icon also because he inspired us to look at each other a little differently. And so for all of us that were from that period of time at Ole Miss, Chucky's revered. 3 weeks after Chucky got hurt, we were sitting at the Sigma Nu house. I was a Sigma Nu, and we read in the Daily Mississippian about another kid named Alan Moore from Lauderdale, Mississippi, who had the exact same injury as Chucky, but he was from a poor area and a school that had very little insurance, and they didn't even have enough money for a wheelchair for this cat. And he had almost the exact same injury. Top 3 vertebrae exploded, quadriplegic, was never going to walk again. And they couldn't even come up with a wheelchair or a ramp to his house. And I was close with Coach Brewer. So Coach Brewer got me in touch with Chucky's family. And, I went to Chucky and he couldn't really talk. He had to push a button to be able to talk on this trach thing he had. And I just said, hey, man, we all support you, and you've gotten an enormous amount of support, and you will the rest of your life from the university and the alumni of the community. But there's this kid down here that has the same thing happen to you. We'd like to raise money for him, but we want to do it in your honor. But I don't want you to see us raising money for someone else and think that we don't care about you. We do. And he whispered quietly to his handler, and his handler said, Chucky says, go for it. So with that, we worked with Coach Brewer, got the equipment, and we started the first annual charity ball. And it was simply a full padded football game where we sold ads, sold tickets, and the other fraternity would match whatever we raised. And we would raise money for someone that had a similar injury to Chucky in honor of Chucky. And we raised $16,000 or $17,000 that first year. And since then, the Sigma News have done it every single year ever since then. I even coached it the last 2 years, which has been kind of coming full circle. And it is now the largest Greek philanthropy project in the entire United States. I think we've raised over $3 million for people who have suffered the same type injury Chucky did in honor of Chucky, keeping the memory of what he meant alive and doing a lot of really good for a lot of people for the last 30-something years.
That's just incredible, Coach. Just thinking about that. Um, talk to us a little bit about your podcast that you just started a couple of days ago and what that means to you.
So after the Academy Awards, I planned on coming back to Memphis and, working in my lumber business, coaching football, being a husband and father, and just doing my normal thing. And the phone rang off the wall and it was, will you come speak to this group and do this group? And so I did. And I started speaking all over the place to places like Nike and Varsity Sports, the Olympics, FedEx, all kinds of brands, Firestone brands, and that kept growing. And I'm speaking all over the place. And then somebody says, all this stuff you're talking about, you need to write a book. So I wrote a book. It's called Against the Grain. And it's done very, very well and continues to do well and keep doing speeches. And because of that, I do a bunch of interviews. And I was asked to do an interview by a guy from Oxford, actually, named Alex Cortez. And in that interview, he was asking about something. And so that the movie, the book, all of this has given me a platform to talk about things that I think are important. I think we've got to talk about race. We got to talk about politics. We got to talk about creed. We got to talk about belief sets, but we got to do it in a very real way, but in a civil, non-threatening way. This notion that if I say an opinion about anything, you immediately know everything about me is dangerous. And this notion that if you don't like what I say, you and your friends are going to cancel me is even more dangerous, because what it does is it prohibits people who aren't just like each other from having conversations. And that's dangerous because we got to find common ground. And so that's been my platform, that we need to have real conversations about stuff that matters just in a civil, non-threatening way. And we might find out we're a whole hell of a lot more like each other than what people want to categorize us as. And I said in this interview that there's places in Memphis and every other city that when you pass by, they're the areas you don't want your car to break down. You don't want to have a flat tire. That's the last place you want your car to break down. And as you pass by and you look over the edge of the viaduct, or you look in the rearview mirror and look back there, you do think to yourself, man, when you see all that poverty and despair, you think, man, somebody ought to do something about that down there one day. As if the sentiment matters. If anything, the sentiment doesn't matter. It's probably hypocritical as you think that and say somebody had to do something that one day when you pass by in your really nice car and your nice loafers and your good, nice watch on you and money in your pocket. And I suggest, instead of looking in the rearview mirror and thinking that, you cock that rearview mirror about 30 degrees, look yourself in the face, say, maybe I ought to do something about that one day. I think maybe we have become too reliant on government that has proven woefully inadequate in caring for the most disadvantaged among us. I do not think all these fancy people on Fox and CNN using big words nobody really uses in conversation, that nobody really understands, are going to solve a damn thing. I just think it's going to take an army of normal folks seeing places of need in each of their community and saying, hey, I can help. And if we just had everybody do one servant thing in their community every year across this country, we could literally create an army of normal folks, just people like you and me, using our talents, seeing a place of need and filling a gap. And if we could do that, I think we could change culture. So that's what I said in the interview, and went on about my business. And 6 months later, Alex calls me back up and he said, I can't quit thinking about what you said. And I'm like, oh crap, what did I say? And he reminded me of what I said. And he said, I want to start a podcast, but also want to start a movement called An Army of Normal Folks. You game? And I thought, whatever. So I did. And we've done 20 interviews. We've canned them. In the midst of it, iHeart got wind of it. They reached out to us. iHeart picked us up. So now we're distributed on iHeart. Iron Light Labs out of Chicago is helping produce it. They've got a team of lots of producers and stuff. And 2 days ago, we released. And as of today, we're the number 10 podcast in the United States and number 1 in society and culture. In only 2 days, there's a lot of listeners and it's going well. And what we do is we interview normal folks that do extraordinary things. We interview just normal folk. I'm not interviewing politicians. I'm not interviewing A-listers. I'm not interviewing celebrities. I'm interviewing normal people from normal places who do extraordinary things. And in doing so, hopefully inspiring listeners to do something in their communities and join, quote, the metaphorical army of normal folks. And I have been absolutely overwhelmed with the response since we launched, and it continues. And you know, it is awesome to me to know that redemptive stories still matter. And y'all, one thing I want to say to you, we're not doing Hallmark stories. When you hear these nice things, they feel like Hallmark stories tied up in nice pink bows. It's not that. We talk about individuals and what they have to overcome: addiction, psychological problems, money problems, family problems, the stuff that normal folks deal with on a daily basis. And we tell these people's stories. And what you find out is they do these amazing things in their communities, not because they were ordained or they have a perfect life. Rather, they do it in spite of the difficulties. They do it in spite of the things they've had to overcome, just like every normal person on the face of the planet has to do every day in their lives. And so the stories are real, they're conversational, they're not overproduced. Hopefully they are redemptive, and hopefully they are identifiable, so that as we grow our listenership, each story is different. There are Black, Hispanic, Asian, white guests, male, female, Christian, Jewish, agnostic, progressive, conservative, moderate, liberal, Republican. They're from all walks of life. And what I am inspired by is what I've learned is that no group has a monopoly on philanthropy and kindness. And the one thing I think we can all get behind, regardless of where we come from, how we worship, how we vote, or how we think, is that if you're willing to do something good in your community, we can all celebrate that together, so we can get behind ideas, not because of our differences, but despite our differences, and find commonality in just being an army of normal folks saying to DC and the media, your power can't control us. We can control us.
That's awesome, Coach. And the thing that I hate is that I would love for my dad to be here right now. You two are talking the same thing to me. Fortunately, I just got back from vacation with him.
Well, get him to listen.
It was just me and him, and
get him to listen.
In the car, and he goes, if we could all just sit down and listen and talk to each other, I think we're all the same people. We're all Americans in the end, and everything that I hear but you say is just coming right out of his mouth. And just so you know, I grew up in it's called College Park, Georgia. It's in downtown Atlanta, right next to the airport. And it's a very mixed bag of group. And I was lucky. I was able to go to a school that was very mixed and all together. And just everything that you just said just made me smile ear to ear, because I'm just like, this is what I grew up with. And, coming out to Ole Miss and Mississippi, I've seen different sides of things that I didn't know existed until I got out into the real world from high school. And just the stories that you've been able to tell me about how you're able to help so much, and how you're going to be able to, like you're saying, you're in a podcast that's top 10 in the United States, and how just amazing it is that you're sharing that message, and just how well spoken it was. Sorry, I needed to say it because it was just like, oh my God, I'm like grinning with joy over here.
Look, I want you to, those numbers are just first 2 days. This thing can go a number of different directions. It's only as good as the word of mouth and people willing to listen, join, and share. So if what I'm saying resonates with you, go to Army of Normal Folks, go to normalfolks.us and listen to it, share it. And maybe, just maybe, we can create this community of people that, regardless of who we are, where we come from, what we look like, or what we believe, can at least rally around one common goal, which is just let's serve our communities a little bit and quit being told by all the smart people in New York and DC that if we're different, we're enemies, because that's a crock. We don't have to be. And we all have stuff to overcome in our lives. That's just what normal folks have to do. But despite that, we can still do extraordinary things.
Yeah, it's just so awesome, Coach. And what
It
you're
is.
doing is very cool. And it's very just inspiring across the board.
I
It's
appreciate
great. Again, this is the best interview I'm ever going to do. And it's early for me. So I'm just like, oh, this is great. Awesome. And I didn't have to talk at all. And you're just crushing it. And it's going to be the easiest podcast ever. So I understand why you started one. But yeah, and everything just. So if you want to go a little bit more into detail about one of the episodes that are coming out soon, if you just want to give somebody like a synopsis, that would be really just easy for us and
what?
easy for you to plug.
What'd you say? A synopsis of what?
Like your next episode that you have coming out, the next podcast. Hey, this is Jack Couch from the Hotty Toddy chat. We'd love to have your ad here in our podcast. Please reach out to us at hottytoddy@olemiss.edu for any inquiries.
Okay, we are back. All right. So you asked me the synopsis of a couple of shows. All right. So I'll tell you a little bit about the first one to whet your appetite, and then I'll give you a trailer teaser on the second one. The first one
Perfect.
is a guy named Tommy Norman, who's a police officer in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Grew up one of 8 children, one bathroom in their house. I thought it was hilarious when he told me that his sisters choked him out with Aquanet every morning because they all shared, and all he wanted to do was be a cop. And so he became a cop in his hometown of North Little Rock, Arkansas. And all he knew was that police officers pulled people over and wrote them tickets and arrested them. And he wanted to do more than that. And so old school, he went into his beat, got out of his car and walked it. And Tommy's a white dude, and the neighborhoods he patrols are largely African American. And he started walking his beat and getting to know people. And his goal was threefold. I want to be invited in their front yard, I want to be invited on their porch, and I want to be invited in their house. And if you could get into somebody's house, maybe you can build a relationship with them. And once he did that, he started collecting phone numbers. And on his off days, he'd call the people on his beat and check on them, just see if they were all right. And in a time where we have the George Floyd thing and the advent of Black Lives Matter and defund the police, and then, well, maybe we don't need to defund the police, maybe we need to reimagine the police. And then, oh, okay, we really do need police, but we don't need police beating people up. And the truth that 99.9% of the police on the streets are great people, and that small percentage taints them all. And we have criminal justice reform. I mean, all of this over the last 4 or 5 years has really torn at the fabric of our society. And in the middle of all of it, while all the press is reporting on one side or the other of that, fanning the flames of discord on both sides of that, while government is acting one way or another on it, depending on what constituency they represent. And really, all we're doing is getting more and more divided by something as simple as good police work and fairness for every citizen in our country, regardless of where you come from and who you are and what you look like. It's Tommy Norman, and nobody knows this guy's story. And all he's doing is walking his beat, getting to know the names of the people he polices, and working to get invited in their homes, develop a relationship with, and getting their phone numbers and calling and checking on them. And this guy's been to birthday parties. He's been to weddings. He's routinely seen on the basketball court with his gun belt on, shooting the basketball, breakdancing in the street. He has spoken at funerals. He has arrested people, even murderers, because that's his job. But he does it with dignity and respect, and the community trusts and loves their policeman, Tommy Norman. And it's so simple that maybe what fixes what ails us and all this entire huge thing we've been going through is a cop simply getting to know those that he's supposed to serve and then serving them. And he has become the face of community policing. He's a huge Michael Jordan fan, and he's now known as the Michael Jordan of community policing. And during all this time, he had people like Snoop Dogg tweeting out about this is how policing should be done. You said Atlanta, Killer Mike. This guy and Tommy Norman became best buddies, and Killer Mike's out there saying, this is how policing's to be done. You want to fix the racial discord between the police. You want disadvantaged communities to start trusting the police. Check out what this guy does. Now he's got 2 million followers on Facebook, 1.5 million followers or so on Instagram. And he's not a captain. He's not anointed. He's a normal dude who grew up in a blue collar environment, and he's still a beat cop at 50 years old. And what he does is he walks his beat and gets to know the people on his beat, and he serves them, and he protects them, and he leads them, and he honors them with dignity. And his story is phenomenal. And he's a member of the army of normal folks. And he did all this, by the way, while having a massive heart attack and having lost his own mid-20s daughter to fentanyl. It's not a perfect world. Normal people have things to overcome. And he had to overcome an enormous amount to be able to do the things he's doing. But in doing so, he has changed his little part of the world. Those are the types of stories we're telling. Next week, I'm going to tell you about I'm going to introduce you to a lady who at 26 years old was dealing with a lot of her own emotional things, was bulimic, was having difficulty with addiction in her family, and her escape was jogging. And she started a program just through running that has turned thousands of homeless people into productive citizens with jobs and homes now, just through running. Despite all she had going on, she just saw a need and filled it with a discipline that she was passionate about, which was running. And if you can imagine homeless people running, and she started a running club for homeless people and changed their lives through it. That's next week, though. So those are the types of stories, and normal people highlighting the amazing thing they've done, despite all the difficulties they've overcome, diving into their lives and understanding those difficulties and understanding those barriers and understanding their passion, despite all those things and the extraordinary things they've overcome. And again, from all walks of life, from all disciplines, from all beliefs, just normal people doing extraordinary things. And hopefully the stories are not only interesting, they're not only informative, but they're redemptive and they're inspiring. And it will inspire our listeners to just become a member of the army of normal folks.
That's
I mean,
amazing,
yeah.
Coach.
And
Yeah.
this is awesome. And just that you have the slogan down, it feels like it's just perfect. This is just so awesome.
Well, I can't go without saying this. You can go to Apple, you can go to iHeart, you can go to Google, you can go to anywhere you listen to podcasts and download an Army of Normal Folks. Our website is normalfolks.us. Go there, download it, join the Army. You can join and you'll get a little newsletter about who we're interviewing, who's coming up next week, and the things we're doing. And most importantly, share. Please share it on social. Share it on your stories. Share it on everything you can. Tell people about it, because podcasts are only as good as word of mouth and people sharing, and get people to listen in and inspired. And maybe, just maybe, we can grow a large community of people that, regardless where they come from, are celebrating the things that are happening good in society, but also celebrating our differences, and that despite our differences and despite our challenges, we can still do amazing things in our culture. So my one ask is just share it with everybody you know.
Trust me, I'm definitely listening
Yes,
across the board. It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited.
yes. Coach, just appreciate your time today. Before you go, could you talk about a little bit about your time at Ole Miss and just what you learned here and how much you
Yeah,
enjoy Oxford?
yeah, man. I mean, I showed up at Ole Miss, 17 years old, wet behind the ears, didn't know much about nothing. Was one of the best things I ever did, and this is a plug for the Greek system. One of the best things I ever did was join Sigma Nu. So much of what I am now and what I learned as a young man, I learned from the people in that place and the alumni of that place. H.E. Perry, Jimmy Davis, Trent Lott. Oh gosh, the list just goes on and on of amazing people that were very involved with us as young men there that taught me. And I was a feature columnist for the Daily Mississippian. I was did some writing there. Back when Ole Miss had a soccer club, I was on the soccer club for a couple of years. Believe it or not, with my fat butt, I wasn't so fat back then. I was really involved in school politics and intramurals. As you know, did work on the charity ball. I was an officer in the fraternity. I was, I loved it. And I work where City Grocery is now, used to be called Sid and Harry's. I made money at Sid and Harry's at night, waiting tables and doing a little management on the side. And it was a great time. It was the place that I grew from a young, impetuous, stupid kid into a young man. And I still love Oxford with everything I am. I still love Ole Miss athletics with everything I am. Lane Kiffin, incidentally, one of the first things he did when he started Tennessee was he came to Manassas, met me to recruit one of my guys. So I met Lane many, many years ago. Coach Orgeron, when he was the head coach at Ole Miss, he recruited a couple of my guys, and one of them went to Ole Miss. And so, it's weird that I was connected to Coach Orgeron through football recruiting and Coach Kiffin through football recruiting. Pete Carroll has been a really strong backer of me. And of course, Pete and the entire Kiffin family are connected. And so I'm a huge fan of Lane. I'm a huge fan of what he's done with our football program. I'm an Ole Miss fan through and through, and I'm an Ole Miss guy through and through, and I revere that place. And I count everybody who's able to live in Oxford among the luckiest people on the face of the planet, and I'm envious of them because it's just a great, great world and a good group of people down there. And so I wouldn't trade any of it for anything in the world, and I still hold it near and dear to my heart for sure.
Yes. What have you thought about seeing that in Mike's 23 years by getting a national championship a year ago in baseball?
Something beat. You're gonna have to do that again.
What do you think about essentially Mike, after so many years here, finally winning a national championship for the school?
Yeah.
Congratulations, and it was high time. I mean,
Exactly.
we've got one of the best atmospheres in college baseball, right? And ESPN acknowledges it, and everybody acknowledges it. And it's amazing, and I'm proud. And I hate the way this year worked out, but nobody can take. There's one thing: if you win a national championship or in high school a championship, it doesn't matter what happens after that. Nobody can ever take that from you. And so those guys did that, and I believe if the community continues to support the NIL and the community continues to support the facilities that Coach Kiffin and continue to support Coach Kiffin, and we continue to fill up the stadium and not leave in the third quarter and give our kids something to be proud of that are on the field. I genuinely believe we have an opportunity in football now with some consistency in the coaching and in the program and in the administration to also have that level of success. I genuinely believe that. But the football team and the coaching staff, they have to do their part, but we as an Ole Miss community have to do our part. We have to match. If we want to be big league, we got to match the big leagues with our giving, with our funding, with our support, with our voices, and with our presence. My hope is that as we continue to have success, we taste that success, but want more and more of that. And we do what we need to do as an Ole Miss community to support that success, because it's not just the coach and the players, it's the entire program. And anybody that's an Ole Miss fan or student is a part of that program.
Couldn't say it better myself.
Yeah.
This is what I've been preaching. You're just preaching to the choir. This is perfect. This
Yeah.
is so awesome, Coach.
What we need to do. All right, fellas, thank you for having me. Plug us, Army of Normal folks. Normal
Absolutely.
Absolutely, Coach.
You're plugged for
right.
sure.
All right, man. Thanks, guys, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Coach.
See you later.
See ya.